because business believes that busyness is where the value is, and actually, I'd rather you take a little bit longer in the thinking and planning phase and then go hell for leather and deliver, and I bet you if you did that, you'd achieve a lot more quickly.
The question is from Thinking Focus.
Hi, I'm Paul from Thinking Focus.
Hi, I'm Ricky from Thinking Focus.
And the question is, how can I do this all over again? Which might need some explaining, to be fair, because we're not talking about a podcast. Before I explain the question a little bit, though, I want to say this is part of our mini series of podcasting. The question is exploring questions that often come up when we're coaching people. We look at a question and we think about how we might respond when faced with this question. And this is an interesting question because it does come up a lot. How can I do this all over again? And typically what we're talking about is a scenario of somebody often coming off the back of it. So coming maybe off the back of a financial year or off the back of a big project and being asked by the organization or their bosses or the people around them to go again, to pick it up, start again. You know, you've come off the back of something really draining and tiring and the biggest project you've worked on for a while, and somebody's going, brilliant, thanks for that. Right, this year, can you go and do X, Y, and Z? And you're like, no, I can't.
It was interesting when this question came up for us to have a look at. Was like, I mean, I've spent years in sales roles, and there's this Groundhog Day mentality that kind of feels every January, you've just worked your rocks off, you've closed out the year, as best you can, or, better than expected. And then guess what? All of the numbers get reset to zero and off you go again. And
there is a little thing about sales as well, isn't it? Like, unlike I think some other, because I think project managers face this a lot as well. Project leaders face this a lot. But I think in sales, that general, start again, everything's back to zero. You might have been a hero. You might have been incredibly successful yesterday. But today, you're back to nothingness. And we don't care what you did yesterday. That I used to find that really challenging in sales sometimes.
But I imagine you see it in sport, in some of the team sports where, you get teams on a run of confidence and they're in a position where the next game can't come soon enough. Whereas actually, if you're on a bad run of results, you're going, oh God, and now we've got to play them, and now we've got to play this team, and they've got this player, and we struggle against them. And the mindset element of this really does play out in terms of, are you up for this or not? And how does that then either get you going, ready to go again? Because if you've had a great year, you've earned a bonus and all that sort of stuff, then the reality is you've probably built yourself a nice little pipeline in sales. Whereas actually, if you've worked, yeah, exactly. Yeah. But if you've worked really hard and you've almost had to close out all of your pipe in order to hit the number, you're then going, oh no, I've now got to start from perhaps further back than I would normally. And that does feel very much like, oh, how am I going to do this again?
Yeah, and I've had that experience where not only have you given all of your pipe, but they've basically come back and said, look, we're really struggling. Other people haven't got what they need. Yeah. Can we have some of your sandbagging, please? And you're like, I've worked really hard to set myself up for the first quarter next year so I don't have to work really hard. And now you're going to take it all off me. And
you've got to be a team player.
Yeah. I know all those arguments. As a manager, I used all those arguments, but I still, as a salesperson, would go, no.
But of course, I think you highlighted this at the start, which is about, in project land, you imagine you've had a really tough project and you've had to convince people to perhaps put in those extra hours in order to get it over the line. You perhaps had some conflict along the way, some arguments in terms of getting things in scope or perhaps out of scope for this particular phase. And then guess what? Your reward is you get a new project. And that new project probably, if you're in organizations, involves the same people that you've just spent all that time with. So now, not only are you feeling, how do I do this all over again? the people that you've engaged and worked with in the past to a greater or lesser extent, to, you know, in a good way or perhaps in a way where you've struggled, all of a sudden they're going, how do we do this all over again? I've just worked my socks off to help us get that project over the line. Do they never think about giving us a little bit time to breathe before we're into the next one?
And you can see that with leaders as well. I mean, I just as you were talking earlier, it sort of dawned on me. I wonder how it must have felt for, you know, someone like Gareth Southgate to, you know, to get the level of stick and abuse he used to get as England manager, almost ignoring the fact that I think he's, you know, the most successful manager the team's ever had in terms of level of performance. You know, I mean, admittedly, you know, they've won stuff once with somebody else, but since then, you know, he's got what, 2 major tournament finals.
Yep, and
No one
semi-finals and quarterfinals.
No one else has got anywhere near close to that. And you think you can almost see it with the last tournament, him going, "You well, actually, I don't know if I can do this all over again." And sometimes you have to accept, I can do this again, but I can't do it here because I can't say to these people and this, you know, because of the groundhogness of it. But let's get on to the point, which is sometimes you can do it here. Sometimes, you know, it's just it's built into the nature of what you do, which is you work in a cyclic profession, and that when a cycle ends, whether that be a leader taking people through a growth spurt of a company, or a sales team, you know, getting to a year end and starting again, or a project leader, you know, finalizing a project and then picking up a new one the next day. You can do it again, but you can't do it unless you stop, reflect, and find, you know, the what's in it for me in the next thing. Because it's not, you can't just keep doing it for the same reasons over and over again, because they'll become more, or you have to become less meaningful for you.
Do you know, that's really interesting because, you know, when I talk to some of our clients and you go, well, what happened at your last PIR? And they go, what's one of them? And I go, post implementation review. And they go, oh, we don't have time for them. You go, well, how do you take any learning then? How do you take any, how do you celebrate your wins as much as anything? But how do you work out, actually, perhaps if we did it differently, or we involved this group instead of that group, or actually used this resource or whatever, but without taking time to pause, reflect, all you're going to do is waste more time by repeating the same mistakes.
That's the thing that always makes me laugh when people say that we don't have time for that. And I was like the other way around, going, I don't understand that. If you're that busy, how can you have the time not to do it? You know, how can you have the time to knowingly go into the next thing, knowing you're going to make exactly the same set of mistakes, not use the shortcuts that you've learned? I mean, it just intuitively doesn't make sense to me. What you're saying is that we value busyness over success. And I get that. If that's your goal, if your goal is just to prove how busy you are, why would you stop and sit down and think about stuff? But if you really value in success, you don't have time not to learn from your mistakes. Because if you don't learn from them, you're going to repeat them.
I agree. But I go, you know, and leaders have a responsibility here, because, you know, we get you want to work at pace, and that's absolutely fine. But pace doesn't mean you can't be sensible and methodical in terms of going, so what went well? Great.
Yeah.
What didn't happen the way we expected it to, and what can we learn from that? Because actually next time we might accelerate quicker by not repeating the mistakes of the past. And I think, you know, so many organizations, and we do a lot of challenge stuff with groups when we're doing, you know, these business challenges. They work on something, and I always say to them, I say, you're going to fail here, here, and here if you don't take these steps, i.e., to be more creative in your thinking before you commit to action, to be more critical about what ideas are worth pursuing rather than just the things you like to do or want to do, and engaging others. There are 3 key steps in the process that you're going to trip up. And they go, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then you come back and do the first review and you go, right, how you getting on? Well, we're not.
Yeah,
Well,
because
what's happened?
We thought of 5 things to do. We ran off and started doing them.
Go straight to action. Go straight to action because business believes that busyness is where the value is. And actually,
to be fair, that is where the name comes from, isn't it?
Well, of course. But you go, actually, I'd rather you take a little bit longer in the thinking and planning phase and then go hell for leather and deliver. And I bet you if you did that, you'd achieve a lot more quickly.
And I come across this a lot, that people talk to you like, but that's a really long, elongated, complex activity. So let's just go back to the post-project reflection or even post-sales year reflection. You talk to people and they're like, well, we can't take days out to do that. And I'm going, why would you spend days on it? I mean, if I did, when I was running sales teams, if we did a 2-day post-sales year reflection, what we were really doing was a 2-hour post reflection and a day and a half of eating, drinking, and celebrating how successful we'd been. We weren't doing 2 days of reflection. Let's be really honest. So it might have said that in our diary. And if any of my old bosses are listening, I apologize now, but you probably taught me it anyway. So don't blame me. But reflecting, stopping, thinking, going, what is it I want from this? To me, it's short amounts of time, but regularly, that's going to make the difference for you. And this comes with how can I do it all over again? If you're getting to the end of the year and you're feeling like I'm worn out from this and you need to go and find new meaning from it, you're probably not going to find that by locking yourself in a room for a day with Post-it notes. You're going to find that by having some conversations, talking to different people. It's small amounts of activity over a period of time that might go, oh, okay, I now see this project slightly differently because this time round, I'm not going to focus on, do I run it successfully? I'm going to focus on my relationship building skills or, something else that I can draw from that project. Do you know what I mean? I've explained that really badly, I think.
No, I think you've got it bang on. I think, that whenever you come to an end point, you've got to do 2 things. You've got to look for the wins, and whether you've been successful in terms of the end game or not, there will have been wins along the way. And it's important that you recognize the wins, however small. But it's also going, okay, so what's the learning we can take from this? How do we harness that in terms of what we do next time? And you might actually go, you know what? I can't do it all over again, and I'm going to do something different. Fine. But you still have a bank of experience and wins under your belt, and you have a bank of learning under your belt. And the reality is, what we're really talking about is goals, right? So we want to go and achieve something. We want to go and deliver something, build or grow something. All of that is aligned to goal delivery, goal achievement. And all you're now doing is redefining a new goal for yourself. And I think that resetting process allows you to then go, okay, there's something new to go at, something different to go at, or actually it's the same, usually with either 10% more for 10% less, I think is the general rule of thumb, isn't it?
Yes.
But the principle is you've got a choice. You don't have to do it all again, but that comes with some decisions, some consequences, and perhaps some personal impact. Or you take the time to reflect, to refresh, to re-energize, and then go again with some purpose. And every goal has some purpose attached to it, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's that bit that sits beneath the goal. So if you take the sales as an example, because I think it's a very easy example, okay, it's probably the same customers. If you're a sales manager, it's probably the same sales team, more or less, with the same products. And you feel like you've done it last year and they're just asking you to go and do exactly the same thing again with, but 10% more this year or 20% more or 2% more, depending on who you work for. It's normally more, though. It's very rarely.
50% was my general thing.
I did have one job where it was, and make sure it doesn't drop by more than 2%. But that was a very unique, special circumstance. But mostly it's like do more. But what I learned doing those roles particularly was, okay, that's what the company wants. Now I have to lay on, what do I want? And so some years it was like, right, I'm going to do this again. But this year, actually, I'm doing it because I want to learn more about managing my team. And next year, it's, I've got a challenge in the team. Can I fix this challenge? Am I good enough to go and deal with this? In the early stages of my sales career, it was like, can I really understand, master my craft as a salesperson or master my craft as a consultant to do better work? So I've got sub goals underneath that, and they are changing. So at the top level, I've got to go and deliver my extra 10% from my customer base. But beneath that, I'm going, how do I grow? What do I get out of this? How do I learn? Because for me, they're more important. The 10% growth to the company is a one-time hit that the company gets, and maybe I'll get paid for it. The ability to take a sales team through a transformation is a life skill no one can ever take back from me, and I can go and use it again and again and again and again. I can make a fortune out of that. So I always looked at it as, what's the investment in the project? What's the investment in Paul? And the times I found it really hard to go again is when I couldn't find the investment in Paul. Because let's be fair, that's the one I really care about.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I suppose that you've described autonomy, mastery and purpose, haven't you? So, where can I take some control? Where can I choose what to focus on? And even if that choose what to focus on includes a bit more of me time, because I'm now a bit more masterful in terms of the day job, I can go and become more masterful in some areas of whatever it is that I want to focus on. And I think that purpose you talked about is going, what's in it for the organization? Yeah, got that tick. What's in it for me? How do I make the most of this opportunity? What can I take from this? And that might be some financial incentives. It might be some other different ways in which you can.
And it might have nothing to do with work, by the way. So
of course,
Again, I can think of a time in my life where I was taking on challenges, but challenges I knew weren't that hard for me personally. I mean, I'm not saying they were unhard challenges, but I knew I had the skills and the ability to cope with them, because I wanted to go and study, and I wanted to do something outside of work that was for me, and therefore I needed to work in a way that meant I didn't have to work till late nights or travel a lot. And that's fine. That was for a period of time, and then you renegotiate. So I think it's a constant. What do they want? What do I want? How do I find some kind of way of making all that fit together? And just because what they want is the same as what it was last year, doesn't mean what I want is the same as what it was last year. Because if I got the learning from last year, I now want something new.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely right and fair. And I think it's, you got to take stock, and then you got to work it out and go, as you said, what do I want from this?
And again, just sort of to explain that, I can think of a number of occasions where I've been coaching people where you very quickly get to, actually, yeah, I could do all that, and I could go somewhere else, and I could take on the bigger job or the bigger project or the bigger role. But my kids are at this age, and I'm not getting this back, and I'd quite like to be at home a little bit more. Yeah, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Just accept it for what it is. And just because for the next 2 years you're going to do something that might not be as big or as challenging, or you're going to push for the big promotion and you can spend a bit more time with your kids, you're not making a life decision. You're just taking a time. And in 2 years' time, trust me, your kids are going to outgrow you, and there's going to be a point when they really don't want you around.
But I think that's that's a really important point, because, when people make these kinds of decisions, they make them as if it's forever.
Yeah.
And you go, but it isn't.
It's not.
We interviewed on our sister podcast, Leading to Here, a lady from the US who basically she would move jobs every 2 years, because part of, what am I getting from this? Where's my growth? Where's my opportunity? And if I can't see it, I move on. Because she saw that collection of experiences, this assembly of tools and experiences that would enable her to become more impactful as she grew. And as she thought that if I stay where I am, I'm going to go stale. So she clearly worked out my path is not necessarily about progression in terms of role, albeit that was the case. For her, it was going exposure to as many different tools, experiences, all of those things. And that's it's really impactful because she's got a real plan around it's about me. It's not about the job that I'm doing. It's about me. What can I get from this? Accepting I've still got to do the job I'm paid for, right? But it's all about me.
Nice plug, by the way. Leading to Here is the other podcast. If you want to find it, available at all good podcast stores. But yeah, I think it is. It's about kind of going, you know, you've got to find new meaning. If you're feeling like the challenge has come up again and you've got that, all over again, what you're really telling yourself is you've kind of detached from the purpose slightly. And that might be that, you know, you've achieved what you wanted to achieve in your purpose. That was the primary purpose, not the business purpose. And you need to go and find a new thing for you. But that doesn't mean you have to change jobs. The new thing for you might be exactly where you are. You just got to reframe it. It might be that you need to go and have some conversations about the business purpose and go, I need more, or I need different, or I need something else here. But again, that might not mean that you need to go and change jobs. It might mean you need 5% extra. But you've got to find a meaning in it, because doing something, this comes back to, we've talked about this on so many other podcasts. If you're going into that new adventure, the new financial year, the next project, going, I'm going to get nothing out of this. It's the same old. It's all pointless anyway. Well, that's not healthy. That's not good. You're not going to do your best work. That's really draining. So you've got to know why you're here. I think there's I can't remember the quote. It's a famous Victor Frankl quote who talks about, given the right why, humans can almost do anyhow. I should look the quote up really and get the proper quote. I will when we publish the podcast. But yeah, I think that's really true, to go, if you don't know why you're there, and why could be very personal or it could be very business orientated, that's your choice. But if you don't know why you're there, if it doesn't align with your values and your reason for being, yeah, it's going to be really hard to go again. But when you find out where it does, it's not so bad.
To find out how Thinking Focus can unlock the potential within your organization, go to www.thinkingfocus.com, where you'll discover more about the work we do, helping our clients increase productivity and enable change.